Hello, everybody. Welcome into SportsDay Insider presented by the Dallas Morning News. I am Kevin Sherrington, joined by my pals Evan Grant and Calvin Watkins. It's another cold Tuesday as we're taking this. Frigid cold. Did I tell you all that I went out to the Mavericks game on Saturday and Brad Townsend told me before I left to go home, call me and tell me what it's like, and I'm going to decide whether I'm going to stay in a hotel downtown or if I'm going to try to get back to Flower Mound. So I said, sure. Well, I got to tell you, I was glad I had the four-wheel drive. Because just getting out of the parking garage, the truck in front of me was spinning all over the place. I had to wait for him to finally get out of range and hope that he wouldn't run into me. And then I'm just plowing past stranded cars left and right getting out of there. It looked like a scene from Fargo. I finally ended, when I was going down the tollway, there was not another car in front of me for miles as far as I could tell.
Yeah, and I was asked if I would be available to come in and potentially work a snow shift over the weekend. And like the hero that I am, I said, yeah, I'm not going to cross the Margaret Hunt Hill Bridge. And then it comes out that the Washington Post is basically going to scuttle its foreign desk, and all those people are fighting to stay in Ukraine and cover Ukraine, and I can't cross the Trinity River. So another vote for Coward of the Year here.
Well, we're not giving you any kind of medals, that's for sure. But anyway, it was pretty crazy out there, and no problem. So anyway, Brad did stay in a hotel Saturday night in Dallas, downtown Dallas. So that was interesting.
I hung out Friday night.
Yeah?
Yeah, all the Laker writers, we all went to dinner Friday night at Bishop Arts. And Brad Turner, who covers the Lakers for LA Times,
Yeah.
so I dropped him off at his hotel. He's at the Marriott on Elm Street. And so I went with a buddy of mine, and we live up north. So I was going to drop him off in Frisco. So this is Friday night, like at 11:30, midnight. So I'm like, I think we're pretty good, right? Because it's just raining. So boom, we get on the tollway, and there's nobody on the road for miles. So I'm going to tollway. I dropped my buddy off at his house in Frisco. And then, so I got kind of hungry, right? So I stopped at the gas station, got me a sandwich.
Wait, hold on a minute. I thought y'all went to dinner, and now you're hungry again?
Well, I had a little snack, and we had drinks after we had dinner and smoked a cigar. So I got home at maybe 1 o'clock in the morning, and I beat the storm.
Beat the storm. Way to go.
Yeah.
And you got 3 meals in before.
3 meals in
that was
5
really
hours
good.
in.
Way to go. Good planning. Well, yeah, it's
I kind of lost the plot when you said you got hungry after supper.
We used to tell a story about an old sports writer who did that once when everybody went to dinner and then everybody was leaving and they looked and he was pulling in the Jack in the Box after dinner. I didn't realize that was you, Calvin. I thought that was somebody else.
I went to Quick Trip, got one of those, they had a turkey and...
Now, don't tell me you just ate at a gas station.
I did.
Hey, you have eaten at gas stations.
I have not eaten pre-made sandwiches at gas station. They have been fresh-made Cuban sandwiches at the gas station. Okay.
Tell that story. It's almost spring training. Tell that story, Evan, about your Cuban.
Well, we went. I don't even know how we ended up in that place, but we. I had Kevin, because it's like my time driving Miss Daisy during spring training when Kevin comes down. He sits in the back seat and he just tells me where to go. But we were in Port Charlotte back in this. So this is over 20 years ago, and we were going somewhere. I think we had to stop and get gas or something, or I wanted to stop on the way somewhere to get like a drink because we were driving somewhere. And we walk in and there's like a deli counter there and it says Cuban sandwiches and I started, I saw that, I got all excited and I asked the guy, like, are you making Cuban sandwiches here? And he said, yeah. I said, are you like pressing them and everything? Like, are they genuine Cuban sandwiches? He said, of course I'm pressing them. What kind of gas station do you think I'm running here?
Yeah. What kind of gas station do you think I'm running here? That's
One
a
of the great
classic.
formative lines in my food journalism career.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about your food journalism career and your 5 hamburgers that you ate.
Why, you got
Plenty
any disagreements with any of them, Kevin?
pretty much, yes, all of them. No. You got Smash Burger in there. That was good.
That's not Smash Burger. That's Burger Schmurger.
Burger Schmurger. Yeah. I'm sorry. He and my wife are like on a first name
Our
basis.
friends.
Yeah.
Calvin, what's your favorite burger in town? Since you eat 2 meals after dinner.
Yeah, we should ask Calvin this question. He could have got all 5 in one day.
I know.
I don't have a favorite burger place, but when I saw your list, I said, you know what, this might be something I need to do in the off season. So I might have to hit all 5 of those places.
Calvin can't do that during the season. He's just so intense.
Yeah, but he can do it in one good Friday night during a snowstorm.
Calvin has not eaten the entire season. This Cowboys team has worried Calvin so much that he has not eaten the entire season. And now he's catching up. So
Kevin, what's your favorite burger in town?
Mine? Well, I'd say Burger Schmurger's probably. I gotta tell you, if I was just limiting it to chains, my favorite is Shake Shack. There's one over here by our house.
They make a good burger. They do make a good burger.
I ate one the other day, and it almost burned my tongue. The meat was so hot. I thought that is perfect.
Did you put it for workman's comp?
I did not. I might sue them, but I'm not putting it for workman's comp.
We're not doing the chains, but Shake Shack and In-N-Out really get me. But at 11 o'clock at night, you still got to go Whataburger. I mean, I think like Whataburger is like the perfect antidote after 11 p.m.
Oh, for sure.
Before 11 p.m., I'm going somewhere else. But after 11 p.m., it's Whataburger.
I love Whataburger. Here's my one problem with Whataburger. I wish the buns weren't so freaking big. They're just too big.
They got bad bun to meat ratio.
Yeah, it's too much. That's one of the things I love about Shake Shack is you get that regular burger, and it's just a little nice. It's like the Goff's burger. It's about that size. Goff's was in its prime was a terrific burger, and it was small and it was good. I just don't like it. I like everything fresh about the Whataburger, and that's what's great about a chain. Their stuff is all very fresh.
In-N-Out's the same way, and they're freshly made. Goff's will probably make February's list of affordable burgers that are great in Dallas.
I have not been there since they sold.
I was there in December. I got to go back, but their burgers it's still the same deal. You're just not getting verbally attacked by Harvey Goff.
Harvey. That was part of the charm, I guess.
I'll tell you what, though, it's going to be hard for me to come up with a better value burger under $10 than Keller's. I know you got to sit in your car and eat it outside there, but it's a good burger for $5.
That's the great part about it. I love Keller's. My oldest son, when he was at Hillcrest, and he was on the golf team, when they would go to a tournament, he and his buddy Collier Bailey, they would always stop at Keller's on the way back and to eat. It's always a great burger.
And you can tell by burger talk and snowstorm talk that we don't have a lot going on with the Cowboys, but still,
I think I'm gonna go. You know what? I'm gonna go to Keller before I go to the East-West Shrine game today.
There you go.
It'll take me 3 hours to get to the Keller's and 3 hours to go back to Frisco, but I'm gonna try to do that today.
I like that. I like your attitude. That's good, Calvin.
It's a can-do approach.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about what's going on here with the Cowboys. So apparently, all the rats are getting off the ship.
How? Kevin, you just call all the coaches rats?
Rats. Randy Galloway once called Roy Tarpley a 7-foot rat.
Oh my God.
Which was just a little much, I think. But anyway, I don't mean that. We got the new coach, the new defensive coordinator coming in from the Eagles, their pass game coordinator, Christian Parker, 34 years old. That is right, Calvin, 34?
34. Youngest defensive coordinator in franchise history. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Younger even than Tom
Landry was.
Yeah. Tom Landry, I think, was 36 when he took over the team.
Yes, he was 36.
So this is different. So Calvin, Tell me why this happened. Why did Jerry change his mind? Because as we all know, Jerry always wants to hire former head coaches as defensive coordinators. I always thought that was just so the head coach could worry about somebody, maybe stabbing him in the back, and Jerry likes that kind of thing. I don't know why he changed his mind now, though, Calvin. What do you think is up with that?
I think the last two coordinators he hired, Mike Zimmer and Matt Eberflus, were disasters. And
To put it mildly,
the Cowboys gave up 511 points last year, which was the most ever in franchise history. And I think he realized, let's try something different. Christian Parker comes from good stock. He learned under Vic Fangio, who has won 5 of 7 games against the Cowboys as a coordinator and a head coach. He coached in the Eagles. He's a good secondary coach. Cooper DeJean, Quentin Mitchell, two guys that swear by him. Patrick Surtain in Denver, who the Cowboys wanted to draft 100 years ago. Instead, they hired Micah Parsons to draft. So this guy is very smart, very young, 34, becomes highly recommended, and has coached on teams that have beaten the Cowboys. They did look at Jonathan Gannon, the former coach of the Arizona Cardinals, who also was a former coordinator in Philly. But he comes from the Matt Eberflus school. So I don't think you wanted to bring that kind of guy back because it would have been a disaster from the fan base. So they picked Christian Parker, which was a kind of a surprise because you have to go back, maybe Dave Campo to the last time they hired somebody that was not a coordinator at someplace else that Jerry hired. Maybe even Butch Davis in the 90s. So it's been that long where he has done something like this. And Jerry, as you guys know, is not afraid to do something different. So this is something different. So he's got Christian Parker.
Well, I don't have any problem with that. The one thing, well, I will say this. He did work. He did have some pretty good material in Denver in Patrick Surtain and also in Quentin Mitchell and Cooper DeJean in Philadelphia. But I'm not going to hold that against him because, as you said, they did swear by him, and he worked under Vic Fangio. And I wrote something about Vic Fangio a couple of years ago, and I got all this stuff from Cowboys fans going off, oh, he's no good. It's like, well, I don't know. He beats the Cowboys every time he plays them. I don't know why you would say he wasn't any good. And I think it's because, of course, as we all remember, Vic's the one who said he had the formula for beating the Cowboys and Dak Prescott. So maybe, Christian Parker can tell us what that formula is, and maybe the Cowboys can avoid that. Although it hasn't really, the Eagles are, yes, that's kind of a straight up competition there. But as we've also noted here, and we never really talked about this a lot, Calvin, but Dak Prescott has a tremendous record against the NFC East and against the Giants and the Commanders in particular.
Mostly really because they suck.
Well, that's part of it, but the Eagles have been. Well, there have been years where the Commanders were good last year, not this year, but last year they were good. But the Eagles, even against them, his record has been good. His record is not so good against the rest of the NFL. And do we have any idea why that is? Is there some speculation? It's just that just the familiarity he has with those organizations because he plays them twice a year, or what? Have you got a theory on that?
I think. Well, let's look at the Giants. The Giants have been bad ever since Dak got into the league, right?
Yeah.
He
got into the league the year after Tom Coughlin quit
yes.
or left the Giants. So yeah, I think that's a possibility there. Yeah.
Washington has been Washington. They've also have been a disaster since Dak has gotten into the league. I think Dak is 13-2, I think, against Washington. Philly, he's been split with, and he's missed a couple of those Eagles games because he's been hurt. Right. Dak gets hurt every other year. However, he is able to beat the Eagles. I think he's 10-5 against them, something like that. So it's familiarity and the fact that the Giants have been bad and Washington has been bad. and everybody else is pretty good, right?
So you're saying that this year is the year that Dak gets hurt since he played? He made almost the whole year this year.
Played the whole year this year. The previous year, hamstring, full season. Then the other year, it was his thumb, full season. And the next year, it was his ankle. So since 2020, he's played every other year. Yes, sir. So it's been an issue.
I'd like to
That'd be
point out
great.
one thing because there have been some in the pre-show talk. There was some thought about like staying on track about certain things. I just like to point out that we are here talking about
Okay.
the new
Listen, this
defensive
is
coordinator, and we're
this
worried
is
about how he's going to fix Dak Prescott.
well.
So
Listen, I'm telling you something that might help. He's got news. Christian Parker's got stuff from Big Fangio. I'm telling you, this is the real reason why Jerry hired Christian
listen,
Parker
if
was because
Christian Parker simply fixes the Cowboys' historically worst defense, I
that's
think
enough for
that'll be
you.
enough. And I got to believe, Kevin, that you're a full-on endorsement of this guy coming from Philadelphia. I know he had great talent there, but he's coming from Philadelphia. You know, he worked with the GM there, who you're a huge fan of.
Howie Roseman, my guy.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, this is a home run hire at this point in time.
Well, we'll see. I mean, he's never been a coordinator, and he's only 34 years old. I'm not holding that against him. And look at what Mike McDonald has done. He's in the Super Bowl in his second year as a head coach of the Seahawks. Of course, Mike Vrabel is in the Super Bowl, and his first year as coach of the Patriots. Although it's not his first go around as a head coach, he was also the head coach of the Titans. I feel bad about pointing out that Mike Vrabel was the guy I wanted the Cowboys to hire when they hired Brian Schottenheimer, but let's not go there.
You don't feel
The,
bad about pointing that out one
I
bit.
don't. You know, it's interesting though that both those guys are defensive coordinators, right? Because we were moving away from that. We were getting to a more of a situation where offensive coordinators were the guys, right? The geniuses like the Sean McVays, uh, that type of coach. It seems to me that we are kind of, and maybe that's just more of a case in college football where the offensive coordinators have taken over the game as head coaches. In pro football, that's a little less of the case, although still interesting from the standpoint of what you're trying to get. Like the Steelers went out and hired Mike McCarthy, right? And I got to believe that they hired Mike McCarthy and broke a pattern where they were hiring defensive guys. Since 1969, they've had 4 coaches now, which is just phenomenal to think about. Um, and but Mike's a Pittsburgh guy, and so I'm sure that got him a little mileage, and he's won a Super Bowl. But he's an offensive guy, and I think that they feel like that Mike can come in and fix their offense. I'm going to tell you that he's not going to fix it if Aaron Rodgers is going to be his quarterback, because he's done. If Aaron Rodgers comes back, he's not the Aaron Rodgers that he had in Green Bay. It's just interesting though that defense seems to be kind of rising a little bit now. These are the teams that are advancing, and maybe that was just always the way it is. And that's the problem for the Cowboys, because Jerry prefers offense, because offense sells more tickets. Offense is more exciting, at least to Jerry, and that's to me one of the reasons why the Cowboys are in the middle of this drought for 30 years. He's spending more money on that, right, Calvin?
No, yeah, I agree. It's interesting that some of the better teams in the league this year have had defensive head coaches, right? Because if you have these Sean McVay type guys who are running around, running the league offensively, if you can find a man that can slow those offenses down, then you might get a job. Sean Payton is still running around out here. He was in the championship game with Denver, right? And his defense did a very nice job in keeping that game close on Sunday in the AFC Championship game. So,
While you're talking about Sean Payton, let me ask you this real quick. It's been my impression this is the great tragedy of Jerry Jones' tenure, or maybe not the great tragedy. There's a lot of them. But isn't Sean Payton the coach that got away? I mean, isn't he the guy that Jerry always wanted to hire? The timing was never right. Sean liked working for Jerry, gets along with him. To me, this was the one coach who could have made it work. because he likes Jerry, or at least he has worked for him. He's been in the building before, and he's done a great job. He did a great job in New Orleans. He's doing a great job, save for that, fourth down, going for it down there in the red zone in the second quarter of the AFC Championship game. No, he shouldn't have done that. But look, he's got Jarrett Stidham, who hadn't thrown a pass in 2 years, who had just given him one touchdown. He thought, if I can get one more here, if I get one more touchdown, maybe this will be enough. And it wasn't, and he messed up, and he knows that now. But look, a great coach. He's taken the Broncos had been 6 losing seasons in a row before he got there. He's gone from 8 to 10 to 14 wins here in his 3 seasons. I really think this is the guy that Jerry could have lived with, and could have lived with Jerry, and could have done a great job.
Yeah, it was all about timing, I think, with Sean Payton. And remember, he was in New Orleans for a long time too, right?
Right.
If you count how long he was there, you could probably count the number of coaches Jerry hired, like Wade Phillips.
Well, he had
Parcells,
and he had Drew Brees all that time. Why would he leave Drew Brees to go
Right.
to come to the Cowboys?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, and then you can also add Dan Campbell. Like, if you look at all the people that either played for Bill Parcells or coached under Bill Parcells, they eventually became head coaches. Sean Payton, Dan Campbell, Todd Haley, and then then Aaron Glenn, who played for Bill, and so that's 5 coaches right there off the top of my head that at some point were in Jerry Jones's building, and that for whatever reason he didn't see enough to say, I need to keep this guy.
Yeah.
Right. I remember when I first got on the beat, they traded Dan Campbell away, to Miami, I believe it was, back in 2006. And then you never thought enough of Dan Campbell to say, let's bring him back because someone thinks he could coach. Right. So, and last year he wouldn't even interview Aaron Glenn for the job. Now, yes, Aaron Glenn wanted to go to New York, and we get all that, but I think sometimes the hiring practices and the hiring process that the Cowboys have is so flawed. Interview some different guys, see what they're saying about your team, and I think, and when we go back to your point with Christian Parker, I think they changed up how they went about their business. Right? They did interview Jonathan Gannon, who is, I wouldn't even say he's a retread, but he's a former coordinator that had success. They interviewed him, and they interviewed Christian Parker, and they also interviewed Deron Jones, who just got a job in Washington as their defensive coordinator. So he interviewed some guys who had never been coordinators before, and said, all right, let's take a chance on this guy. And I also think Brian Schottenheimer had an influence on this as well. That also helped get Christian Parker this job.
Of the guys and you and I talked about this last week before I wrote this column, but another guy that left and they didn't consider, they said, sure, you can leave, was Aiden Durde, who was the defensive line coach for the Cowboys. He goes to the Seahawks as their defensive coordinator. Now, he does not call the plays. Mike McDonald calls plays on defense, but Durde is still the defensive coordinator of a very good defense, and he's getting interviews for head coaching jobs now, and the Cowboys never considered him. And he was part of the reason, and I'm not going to say he's all the reason or even half of it or a quarter of it, but he's part of the reason that DeMarcus Lawrence went to the Seahawks because they were good friends, and because Durde recognized what a great player DeMarcus Lawrence still was, and that's always been a sore spot for me here, is that Cowboys fans just never warmed to him. He didn't put up great sack numbers. His sack numbers were good, but he was more of an all-around defensive end, great against the run. This year, Pro Football Focus had him as 11th best defensive end in the league. His pass rush numbers are not that great, but everything else he does is really good. Great motor, plays hard all the time in practice. A guy who's a leader, and I think you would call him probably the leader of that Seahawks defense, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would a little bit. Leonard Williams, the defensive tackle, and he's been also a spark plug for them the last couple of years. They have a great secondary. we talked about this last time I think, with you guys. Aiden Durday, the defensive coordinator for Seattle, he's another guy. He was in your building, right? He is here, and he is well respected. And you should have interviewed him. You should have gave him a chance, right? And you didn't. And so now you can't get him unless Seattle was going to let him go. But when I think about the Cowboys coaching staff this year, only two guys, right? Two, Lunda Wells and now Clayton Adams had interviews other places. Now they blocked the Eagles from interviewing Clayton Adams because that's a lateral move, right? And they didn't block Lunda Wells from interviewing in Washington for OC's job, which he didn't get. But if I think about all the other years, not a lot of people are banging down the door to interview Cowboys assistant coaches. Kellen Moore a couple of years ago, then he eventually left and got a job, but hardly anybody under Wade Phillips. So I think by hiring Christian Parker, a young coach who's going to bring in some other younger coaches, I believe, maybe you can build your pool a little bit of saying, hey, like in LA with Sean McVay, let's get some good coaches in here that everybody else wants. Because that means we're winning football games.
Well, that's the issue here too, right, Calvin? Is that you're not winning, so nobody wants your coaches.
Nobody wants your people, right? Yeah. Right. But in Minnesota, everyone wanted Brian Flores. Everyone wanted Deron Jones, right? He was in Minnesota, and they didn't get to the playoffs. But they were good coaches,
right?
And the Vikings defense was pretty good. So
you
got to give. And the other thing that we haven't talked about is it doesn't matter who you hire. You could have hired Evan. You could have hired me. But if you don't get this guy players, it doesn't matter. You got to get him ball players. You got to get him ball players. And that's on Jerry in front office.
Doesn't matter. All right, Evan, we can't keep Calvin on here all day. Is there something else that you want to talk about? Do you want to talk about the Super Bowl? Do you want to talk about what do you want to talk about?
No, I mean, we can talk about the Super Bowl next week. The only thing that stood out about the Super Bowl for me is, again, it's two teams who had a championship era run and have rebuilt, changed coaches, and are back in the Super Bowl. It's certainly possible. It doesn't have to take 30 years counting. And it's just, again, more evidence that what we see with the Cowboys is the anomaly. And maybe that's why, for me, I'm all on board with the Christian Parker hiring. I'm all on board for changing the way things are done. I'm all on board with the idea that we're going to get coaches in here who have their best days in front of them rather than their best days behind them. Better late than never for Jerry. I think this is a good hire, and I think it's a start.
I will say this. It's interesting to me. I wanted to know, because Mike Vrabel's in his first year in New England and as a head coach, and Mike McDonald in his second in Seattle. So is it unusual to have guys get into the Super Bowl so early in their coaching careers? And when I looked this up, the average tenure of a coach before he gets to a Super Bowl, and actually gets to one. Now, this is not just all coaches, just the ones who get to the Super Bowl. It's about 4 years. That's the average. So that means that obviously there are guys who are the guys on these guys that skews it, right? It's more to the low side of that scale at 1 and 2 years. And there are coaches who take a little while to get there. But it is interesting to me to think that no, you can put this all together really quick. And what happens sometimes is then they don't go back, right? That's what happened to Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh. He went, a couple of times early and then never got back again. And we do see that sometimes a coach, because he gets to a Super Bowl, we think, okay, well, you got to hold on to him. He got you there, or if he won one, then you owe him that, right? And I'm not saying that was the right thing with what happened to Mike Tomlin, because I think he's a great coach. I think the problem in Pittsburgh, as what Calvin said earlier, is he didn't have a quarterback. He's had these clowns come in every year at quarterback for him. You can't win with what they've been putting out there for him. So that's everything. But it is interesting to think that maybe after a while, people are just tuning the coach out at some points. You got to have fresh blood. every once in a while. What's
I
your
don't. I don't think anything stands out about the average being 4 years. Yeah, I mean, I think that look, Vrabel's the second time head coach at McDonald. This is his second year. I think those are they do skew it a little bit. But when you think about it, right, you bring in a coach to take over a team that's obviously going to rebuild, or that is in a cycle of losing. First year is about putting in your message. The second year is about significant improvement. Third year is probably a playoff run, and the fourth year is learning from your playoff mistakes and hopefully capitalizing on it all. So, I mean, to me, that's about the cycle of what it should be, and I think in large respect, right? I don't know how many coaches, if they can't go deep into the playoffs, should get more than 4 years.
Well,
I
Mike
think that's what Jerry
McCarthy.
thinks,
Oh,
right,
sorry.
Calvin? Don't you think Jerry thinks that?
Yeah, he thinks. I mean, the thing I've learned is it is so hard to win, right, in this sport.
In any
So
sport,
any sport,
Sure.
right? It's hard. I mean, yeah, it's hard. Like Mike McCarthy, he gets the Super Bowl in his fifth year in Green Bay, right?
Yeah.
Never goes back. Mike
Right.
Tomlin goes to 2 Super Bowls within the first 4 years of his career. He's not even 40 years old. He's been to 2 Super Bowls. Never goes back. You know, it is hard. One of the interesting things about your boy in New England is that Robert Kraft, the owner, said he screwed up. If you remember, Gerald Mayo replaced Bill Belichick, and it was a
Right.
disaster.
Right.
And Robert Kraft said, I messed up because I didn't allow Gerald Mayo to hire his own coaches. He didn't have a big enough pool. He was so young in the game. He didn't know who to hire as assistant coaches to help him. So now he gets Mike Vrabel, who had been a head coach for about 6, 7 years in Tennessee. So he had a pool of coaches that he knew. And Kraft said, I let him run the ship. So I think that's the biggest difference there. And here's the other thing. Drake May's in his second year. They got Josh McDaniels back, who's a great coordinator. So that also helps a little bit there. In Seattle, they have an excellent GM that was able to kind of get these people players so you can, and they gambled on Sam Darnold, right? And
Yeah.
Sam Darnold was a turnover machine when he was in Minnesota, and then they get him in Seattle. Now he had a wonderful game in the NFC Championship game, right? And I picked against them, because I just thought the Rams were a better team. They had your boy Matthew Stafford, right? And because you don't depend on Sam Darnold to win that game, so it's all about players. And maybe to Evan's point, maybe after 5 or 6 years, we gotta move you out as a head coach, because we get the continuity and all that, but at a certain point, we just
it ain't
spinning our
working.
wheels here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
you're winning games, but we're not like McCarthy won 12 games 3 consecutive years, right?
Yeah.
So Jerry was like, you know what? Jerry said this. You lost to Green Bay in the playoff game, so I'm not giving you an extension. So now everyone's a lame duck. And then he hires 98-year-old Mike Zimmer as his defensive coordinator. And then the season's a disaster. It was.
Yeah,
It was. It just was. And I think that's the turn.
Here's the indictment to me for all of this is that what we know about all it. Look, as an indictment of Mike McCarthy, he only won one Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers, who might be the most talented quarterback of my lifetime.
Sean Payton won one Super Bowl with Drew Brees.
I know, but that's
nobody talks about that. Drew Brees the Saints were great. They're playing in the weak NFC South.
He was, and that's a great point too. Their careers are remarkably similar. But my point is that Mike Tomlin hadn't had a quarterback in forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, because even at the end of Ben Roethlisberger's career. But what did Brian Schottenheimer have this year? He had the 7th-ranked quarterback in the league, according to Pro Football Focus. Sam Darnold was the 10th ranked. Now, Sam Darnold had a better year than everybody thinks he had, but he was still the 10th ranked quarterback in the league. Matthew Stafford was number 1. So my point is that, for everybody who always says, oh, they'll never win with Dak Prescott. Well, I don't know. It looks like to me they could, but that was the thing. Dak had a tremendous season, and they won 7 games. What an indictment of everything else about the organization when you have a quarterback playing at that level, and there are so few quarterbacks who are playing at that level, and you just won 7 games. I mean, I think historically, if we look that up, I think this is probably there probably hadn't been 20 teams in the history of the NFL who've done that. Because if you get that kind of play from your quarterback, usually you're really good, and your
Yeah,
offense is
of
really
course,
good.
the anomaly here still goes back to the fact that you traded the best defensive player in the league, arguably the best defensive player in the league, a week before the season started. So,
Yeah.
you
Well, yeah, that's all
handicap
part of it.
your defense, and that's all self inflicted.
But you
Yeah,
see
it's
what
all
happened in
part of it.
Buffalo. You saw what happened in Buffalo, right? They fired the coach because you can't get us to the next level, regardless of how many turnovers Josh Allen had in that AFC Championship game or in the playoffs, in not the AFC Championship game, in the postseason, right? They fired that coach because they're like, you can't get us to the next level, right?
Yeah, right.
So at some point, same thing in Baltimore. They fired Harbaugh because he's an excellent coach, right?
Yeah.
And he's got Lamar Jackson, and some of it's not his fault, but we need another voice. So it's time to move on sometimes.
There's some big coaches going around. There's no question about
That
that.
just comes down to accountability. Somebody's going to have to suffer accountability when a team doesn't go to the next level.
And there's no accountability in this organization because the guy in charge won't fire himself. So that's where we go. All
You just
right,
don't
that's
like
going to have to
Jerry. You
do
just
it
don't
for
like
our Cowboys stuff. We would love having Calvin on talking about all this, but we got to talk about some other stuff too, Calvin. So
right.
we're going to
What
talk.
are you going to talk about next? Baseball?
Well, we're going to ask you a little
Winter
bit
meetings.
because
Winter meetings is over.
because you are entertaining Lakers riders and driving them all over the Metroplex, and that is really nice of you to do that. By the way, so Calvin, are you trading Anthony Davis now, or are you waiting till after the season to trade him?
Street clothes? Yeah,
Yeah.
I try to trade him tomorrow if I could.
So you're thinking that whatever you can get for him, it's worth it.
If I can get a garbage guy that can get the dumpsters going in the morning, I'd trade for that guy.
Wow.
And Calvin, what's your reasoning there?
I just think it was a bad trade, number one. So, okay, now you got him, right? But he never stays healthy enough for you to really realize how great of a player he is, right? So, as you guys know, availability is so important in pro sports.
Right.
He's not available enough for me to justify this trade that the GM made that we just fired. So let me get rid of him, and maybe we can get a first-round pick.
Well, don't you think though that maybe you'd be better off waiting till after the season and trading him then, and when he's healthy, and when you've got a new GM and a full-time GM, and you've plotted some kind of course. I think that's the feeling is that now is that you're not going to get full value for him at any point because of his contract, because he wants a big extension, he's got a huge contract, and B, because of his availability, as you said. I always have felt like it on trade deadlines that sometimes you can hold people up because they think we're this close. We're going to go all in here and trade for this guy and give you more than he's really worth because, there's some leverage here and other teams are wanting him as well. And he's going to put us over the top. Anthony Davis, if he's healthy, could do that for certain teams. Maybe like the Celtics, right? There's been a lot of talk about Toronto as well. But the problem is that I think people have just lost faith in the fact that he can't stay healthy. Why would you have any faith that he could stay healthy at this point?
I saw him working out before that game. I think
Yeah.
Mike Curtis tweeted some video, and I always text Mike Curtis. I go, whenever Anthony Davis falls down, I text Mike Curtis, 6 weeks, 8 months. Is he going to get up? Because he's fragile.
He's fragile.
I think it's, given his history, I really think it's wishful thinking to think you're going to get close to what you perceive as dollar for dollar value.
Oh, you're never gonna get that.
When
But the
he's
thing
healthy.
is, what difference is it going to make to trade him now or to trade 3 months from now?
I think what you have to weigh right now is this: are you going to get something of significantly more value if you trade him in the offseason, or is the value here that we are closing this chapter and moving forward with the development of Cooper Flagg and these young players and opening a new chapter where we have an actual direction? And I don't know that a new GM versus the interim situation is going to make a significant difference in what your return is going to be. So for me, I think the quicker you can close the book on this disastrous chapter in Mavericks history and start plotting for the future, I think the better off you are.
Well, I think though, look, you have to remember that too, though. Whoever they hire as the next GM, hopefully it's somebody really good, right? And I want to give that guy the opportunity to make the decision about what he wants to do here. I want, because he may have a completely different viewpoint on this, and this may impact how who you get for that job. They
Let
may
me let me just say this, Kevin. The first question I have in the interview, if I'm Patrick Dumont or whoever's conducting it, is what is your view of Anthony Davis? And if he says, well, I think he could be a big part here. Next.
no, not that. About the trade. About what you want to get the listen. There is a way to make this work. You can't you can't make this as a PR move. You can't say it because we just want to put this behind us. The rest of this season doesn't matter, and everybody knows that. It's just all
But I
about
just think I don't think there's any value there given the injury history. I'm just having a hard time seeing who's going to
listen.
pay anything of
There were
significance.
there were people supposedly there was it had legitimate value here before this. That's what we got to find out, right? We can't just
Maybe
be
they could.
guessing. The Cowboys,
Maybe
I
they
mean,
could trade him
the
back to the
Mavericks have to know.
Lakers.
What's that?
I think they could trade him back to the Lakers.
Yeah,
What do
the
you think?
Lakers, right? They take him back.
Keyword
They
there
might.
is supposedly.
They might. You know what? The Lakers might take him. But that was a remarkable game Saturday, right? The Mavericks were up 14 points, or they were down at 14 points at one point. They climbed back, they were up 15, and then they blow a 15-point lead in the last 7 minutes. That was what a roller coaster that game was.
Would you want to
But
trade him for Jonathan Kuminga in Golden State?
no, nobody wants Jonathan Kuminga. Nobody wants Jonathan Kuminga. All right. So anyway, that's going to do it for us, Calvin. Thanks, pal, and we'll see you maybe in a couple of weeks. How about that?
See you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
You guys have a great day.
Bye,
You too.
Calvin.
Bye, Evan. Bye, Kevin.
Bye. All right, there goes Calvin. We spent a lot of time talking about a team that probably we should spend about 5 minutes talking about, but what the heck? So tell us a little bit now, Evan, about Mackenzie Gore.
You want me to tell you a little bit about Mackenzie Gore? That he's a left-handed soon to be 27-year-old pitcher. I listen. I think the Rangers went out and got a guy who was pitching at the top of the Nationals rotation, who's probably capable of pitching in the top 3 in a championship on a championship team. I think there is belief that the Rangers, on the Rangers' part, that this is a guy who is about to really come into his own. He was an all-star for his first half last year. Had some shoulder issues in the second half that seemed to not really be a long-term concern, but impacted his performance in the second half. And I think the most important thing about it is, look, all winter long the Rangers have made some moves, but they're moves of necessity to fill out a roster. Basically, they saved money by dealing Marcus Semien. They signed a part-time catcher. They signed a number of middle / mop-up type relievers, value relievers, I guess would be the way what to call them. But going out and acquiring Mackenzie Gore is the first declarative move that they've made that says, look, we intend to really compete this year. And I think it changes the view of the offseason for them. I'm not
So,
saying that they've by any stretch been a big winner this offseason, but I do think that given the resources that Chris Young has had to work with, they have gone out and made themselves a better team. They've made their biggest asset better, and that is their starting rotation. There's still, I think you and I talked about this last week, Kevin, right? We can talk about Mackenzie Gore, and we can talk about Evaldi and DeGrom and how great the top of that rotation is. We can talk about Corey Seager, but whether or not this team is a contender is going to come down to, I think, the growth of 9 guys who are ages 30 or younger than the age of 30, scattered around the field and on the pitching staff. And if they don't, and I think that you believe this too, I think the Rangers are going to cut bait at midseason and trade off what they have of value.
Yeah, that's to me, and I think this is probably the way to go with this team because we haven't talked about this, the looming work stoppage, which is liable to cost maybe most, if not all, of the 2027 season. Um, so if that's the case, you might as well go all in now, right? And or at least when I say all in, I really think that the big decision will be made not here in the next few weeks, but probably in late June and July when we see where the Rangers are, if they're contenders, if they are really doing well, if they're right on the heels of the Mariners, then I could see uh, Ray Davis said, "Okay, I'll let you go in for something now. I'll pay some more for right now for the chance to get that. I'll maybe get the payroll back to what it was this last year. Um, if not, if they are just scuffling along like they have been for 2 years on offense, uh, then I could see them to say that's it. Everybody's out. We're trading everybody. We're starting all over again. So because this is a ravaged farm system, right? This is probably a low point for this farm system in the last, I don't know, 20 years for what it has to offer right at the moment. And a lot of that's because they have been trading players and they got them a World Series title. No problem with that. I don't have a problem with them making these deals. Do have a problem with the fact that they haven't drafted well and they haven't kept up with other systems like Seattle's, um, uh, which is so good. And that's one of the reasons why it's going to be difficult for them. That's an uphill battle because the Mariners have a really good roster already. They have a really good rotation already, and they have the kind of farm system that allows them, if they need to, at the deadline, go out and outprice everybody else. So I think this is going to be a very pivotal time for the Rangers, and I'm was down with adding that pitcher. If they could have come up with the money, I was for them going out and getting Framber Valdez.
Yeah, but
For
they,
that
they
matter,
didn't have the money.
right?
And there's a
But
big difference between paying $5.6 million for Mackenzie Gore this year and going out and spending well over $10 million a year for Framber Valdez,
Who is a much better pitcher than Mackenzie Gore?
who is a more accomplished pitcher than him at this point in
Yeah,
time, for sure.
yeah.
Um, but I just want to go back to something you said, and I mean the narrative is that they haven't drafted well, and I get that, but it goes back to my point about how pivotal this year is, because you look at this team and the group of guys that I'm talking about is largely Wyatt Langford, who took a big step, who had a very more than adequate rookie year and took a significant step forward in 25 and needs to take another step in 26 to really become a star player. Um, if Evan Carter plays regularly in center field, that's another draft pick. If Josh Young goes back to, I should say, if he is a productive player at third base, another high draft pick. You look at the rotation, you've got Jack Leiter, who was a first round draft pick. You potentially have Kamar Rocker, who was a first round draft pick. And then you've got Cole Winn, who could be pitching in high leverage situations in the bullpen, along with Jacob Latz. And look, there's a possibility that before the end of the season, you will have a Mark Church or perhaps an Isaac Tiger contributing as a high velocity guy in that bullpen. So this is a pivotal year, like you said, for the narrative on how well they draft and what the future is. You have to make a call. And the thing that's going to be challenging is, let's say the Rangers are where they were a year ago. And even going back to 20 to 24, they weren't sellers. They kind of moved a little bit of money around one way or another, but they didn't sell off anything. And last year they added, even though they were just around 500. So what do you do if the big question, I think, for me is going to come down to, what does Chris Young do if this team is, hanging on to contention in the form of a wild card spot right around 500 at the deadline. Do you hold then or do you pull the trigger? Because I think this team feels like with Mackenzie Gore, their internal projections went from an 85-86 win team to an 88-89 win team. And they feel like that puts them in a different bracket of, instead of competing for the last wild card spot, it puts them competing for one of the first three spots. And that's a significant difference.
Oh,
And
sure.
if you're not competing for that, then you got to take a start. You got to move towards the future.
Well, here's what I think. I think they're going to weigh all of that, obviously, and they're going to look at it like, let's say for one thing, let's just bring it right up of Corey Seager. Do at that point and where he's getting to be in his career, and with if there's a work stoppage for a whole year, is it worth bringing him back after all that, or having him on the roster for 2028? So I think you have to ask a lot of questions about things like that. But the problem is what you just said. I think if they're at 500, but they are still in contention for one of the wild card spots, I don't think he'll blow it up. I think the team would have to be pretty bad. But the flip side of that is that what if someone says, what if you just float some things out there and someone says, this is what I'm going to give you for Seager and whoever, or this is what I'm going to give you for, I mean, look, giving up Nathan Eovaldi and Jacob deGrom, those are kind of no-brainers, right? That's not a hard thing to do. You're not gutting the organization. You're pretty much gutting things if you trade Seager, because at that point you're counting on Sebastian Walcott maybe to come in and play shortstop for you at that point, or at least for him to be the bell cow of your lineup. And that's a lot to ask of a young guy who has not really done that yet. So, or hasn't even made the big leagues yet. So I think it'll be an interesting question as to how they do that. I think I think Chris Young should be open to anything at that point. I want to see what somebody would offer me if I decide to break this all down. If it's not something that just blows me away, I'm going to hang with this, and we're going to see how we do.
I think it's a really important question at the Rangers. It's an exercise the Rangers need to go through early on. They need to make sure of what direction they want to go. And listen, there's one other complication here. You hold Corey Seager all year, he becomes a 10-5 player after this year, which gives him complete no trade protection. Not saying Corey Seager would want to be here for a rebuild, but it does add a layer of complication to making any trade. So I do think that to really ensure that this team is going to move forward with this nucleus, I think they need to get off to a good start this year. I think that's going to be important, and I think they need to maintain that. And then when you look at this season and talking about a good start, well, let's go through this. They open the season at Philadelphia, playoff team from last year. The home opener is against Cincinnati, playoff team from last year, and then Seattle. Then you go to the Dodgers.
They may be out of it by April the 30th. By May 1st, they're out.
Yeah, let me just finish the month. Then you got 4 games in Sacramento. Then you go to Seattle again. You come home for Pittsburgh and Paul Skeens. Then you've got 3 games against the A's, and you finish April off against the Yankees before going to Detroit and the Yankees to open May. So it is a very challenging schedule to start the year, and this team needs to get off to a good start. So if they don't, I think it's going to be a real uphill battle, and I think Chris Young he's not a guy who waits to the last minute. I think he's going to try and be proactive rather than reactive, and so they could be peeling off pieces, come June.
Yeah, there's no question about that. I had not looked at their schedule to see how tough that was. That's a brutal schedule to start the season, and especially when you're trying to get something started again. It's not like there has been a complete makeover. There had been some pieces, taken away, but that is at least the fortunate thing for the Rangers is that at least these guys all know each other, and at least the pitching was really good this year. there are things they can work with. There's reason to be optimistic about what this team might be able to do. But there's also equal reason to believe that this is going to be really an abomination. I mean, if their offense doesn't come around, at least take some of the pressure off their rotation, this could really be a long season.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I just do think that come the deadline, you're going to be looking at this team trading off everything of value that they possibly can, and that's going to be Seager, DeGrom, Evaldi, Gore. If they can get anything for Berger, Higashioka,
Yeah.
Young, they'll trade all those pieces if they're out of it, because they've got to then restock what is probably, it was a 25th ranked farm system at the end of the year, and after giving up these 5 prospects, I'm going to guess it's going to fall to the bottom 3. So they're going to have to rebuild the farm system fast.
Yeah, they will. And trading that does that. Of course, then the question is what kind of team have you got coming back? But they really would have no choice at that point. There's no reason to have, and I don't want to defend Ray Davis, but there's no reason to have a big payroll and full of, and then have some of those guys being older guys too, if your team's not competitive. That's foolishness. And this is the way back. What we've seen in any franchise is that sometimes you got to break it all down and start all over again.
Yeah.
And the foolishness is to keep hanging on and thinking we're going to make this work. Because look, we've seen what the Rangers as well. Even though they won that World Series, that's what there's 9 years around that that were not winning seasons. So
every season since 17, with the exception of 2023, has been a non-winning season.
Yeah. So that's that tells you something, and it should tell Chris Young that as well. All right. Was there anything else we need to talk about, Evan?
No, I think next week maybe next week we'll have Sean on and we'll do a little Ranger roundtable heading into spring training.
Well, we can do that too. We need to talk about the Super Bowl, but yeah, that would be fun to do that. Maybe we don't need to talk about the Super Bowl. I don't know. We talked about it a little bit this week. We'll see. Let's stew on that and see what we come up with.
I'll stew.
I love it. I love it when you stew. I love it. What's your favorite stew?
Is chili a stew?
I don't know. That's a good question. I made a big pot of chili here, and I don't make mine a traditional way. I still use ground beef, but I use beef broth instead of water or tomato sauce, and I do use a couple of cans of Rotel, but then I put a little bit of red wine in there. It's a really bon vivant kind of chili. I think it's really good.
I made a big bowl of chili this weekend too, and you and I have lots of differing thoughts on chili. And I had to improvise my chili recipe a little bit. I do use tomato paste in it, and I didn't have enough tomato paste, so I improvised and
Put
used
ketchup in there instead.
I had about 5 ounces of tomato paste, and then I put a tablespoon of regular ketchup and a tablespoon of Whataburger spicy ketchup, and then
ketchup in your chili.
And then I instead of regular tomatoes, because usually I put regular crushed tomatoes in there.
Yeah.
I only had a thing of fire roasted crushed tomatoes, so I put that in there. Didn't put the whole can. I never put the whole can. But let me tell you something, Kevin. It was really good.
Well, there you go. Let me ask you this about your chili consistency. I like it on a little more of the soupy side. I don't like it to be just like a sloppy Joe.
Mine's got a little bit of broth in it, but it's more of I would say it's more stew than it is soup.
Yeah, when I say soup, I mean I just mean it to be liquid. I don't like to see the meat sitting on the top. I like it to see, when I look at the top of it, I want to just see flat across the top. See what I'm saying there?
Yeah, you see some peaks of meat in mine. But what we didn't have any Fritos to make Frito pie, so what we did was we layered the bottom of the bowl. Layered the bottom of the bowl with some corn, with some tortilla chips that we sprinkled a little bit of tahini on. Woo, baby, was that good?
That was bad storm preparation not to have any Fritos.
It was bad storm preparation when I went to Target on Wednesday and they were out of water. Went to Central Market, they were out of ground beef.
Oh, see, I had all that stuff. We had enough food here for an army, and we had an army here. We had the whole family here because we have a generator now, and so everybody came to our house to stay because they were afraid that their power would.
They were going to lose their power. Nobody came over here, but we had plenty of food.
Yeah, we did too. All right, that's going to do it for this week. We appreciate you stepping in and listening with us. It's been a lot of fun talking about food and the Cowboys and all this other stuff that goes on around here. So from everybody in here to everybody out there, thanks, and we'll see you next time.